Hey everybody, I'm sorry I'm a little late. It's been a crazy day. I gave Jimmy a little bit of a break because he helped me today with a sofa bed. So I still do sofa beds, man. They're heavy, but they take special attention. So I wanted to start the show off actually by talking a little bit about Jimmy and I. Great adventure today, going to deliver this thing out. Another unusual part of this job was that it's up in a community up in the north of Boston. It's about 45 minutes away, so it's 45 minutes each way, an hour and a half, right? And is that right? Something like that. Yeah. And so you have to really do charge for something like that. So this customer is willing. She got my name off the internet. She liked my reviews. She liked what I was doing, and she decided to come down on a Saturday. So she had to travel 45 minutes to get to me. That's a little bit of an unusual customer for me. Normally, my focus is within a 10-mile radius of Boston. So, so hello everybody. So last week, before I get to the story, it's pretty funny. Every time I take you, something funny happens. Today, something funny really happened. But so get the business end of it is that yeah, sofas and sofa beds are going to be the heaviest thing that you do. So you do need two people. I had to pick up a sofa and a love seat the other day by myself, and the way I handled that was it had semi-attached cushions on it, which the customer wanted to change. So the way I was able to do it by myself was to remove in the house the semi-attached cushions so that I could get a grip, a couple of handholds on the sofa. There's a way of doing it. You do it by yourself, it's a little easier rather than try to grapple it, try to grab your whole arm around the back or something. You can sometimes within the back seat, you can hold on to it, which I did. And this was this was a tough pickup by myself because it was a sidewalk. It was a big condominium near the shop, huge condominium complex up on a hill, and I had to pick it up in the back of the apartment and walk it down a sidewalk to the van. That and a love seat. So I managed to do that. On a sofa beds, I need Jimmy or my son. Where are you, Patrick? You come back. He will soon. But so Jimmy and I went on our little adventure. We go up there. Always when you pick up a sofa bed, you guys, if you've never done it before, the biggest problem with the mechanism that can pop out on you, you want to make sure that you take the mattress out. That's about a 60 pound if it's spring, so it makes a considerable difference. And take the mattress out and really tie it down well. I had a piece of webbing, our BFM red webbing with me, about 2 yards long, and I tied it around the hole, where you lift, and the front frame, and did a slip knot on the webbing. And the webbing is really good; it really holds tight. And then I knotted it out and carried it out. Jimmy and I had that thing out of the house. Thank God, first floor, out of the house into the van, and the customer didn't want me to leave the mattress. I usually like leaving the mattress in the house. We had to take the mattress with us, but that's fine. So everything went cool. It was a nice little home, 45 minutes away. So I'm going down the street. I see a Dunkin' Donuts. That's Jimmy's favorite. So I said, let me pull in. It was a drive-through. I pull into the Dunkin' Donuts. Hi, Daphne. And I go up to the first window. I place the order in the microphone area, and then I go up to the first window, pay, and then I see another window up a little way. So I pull up, about 50 feet down. I pull up to the second window, and I look over, and I'm looking into a dimly lit storage closet. And I'm thinking to myself, I said to Jimmy, I said, I think I wasn't supposed to pull up. And he said, "No, I don't think you were." I couldn't back up at that point. So there we were waiting. And I'm looking into this storage closet. I've never been to this area before, so I didn't know the routine. Finally, a girl came over, and she opened the window with the with the drinks. And Jimmy had to be a wise guy. And Jimmy says to the girl, "He's going to be in the rest home before you know it." And the girl said, "You know what? This place is a rest home," meaning the Dunkin' Donuts. So we all laughed, and I said, "Oh," I said, "I don't think there's anything too bad about that. You get coffee, and you can have the Jelly Donuts in your bed." And the girl got a little upset, and she closed the window. She said, "That'll be enough of that," and closed the window. I said, "Jimmy, what I say?" I didn't understand at all what I said. And Jimmy says, "Wait till I tell your son." I said, "Jimmy, I don't know what happened there." So we pull away. I said, "Boy, you got to be careful what you say to some people." I still don't know what the reference or anything is. And Jimmy was laughing. He thought it was a riot. So I just thought I'd mention this to you guy. Happy Monday. I mean, when you're in upholstery, sometimes I think you have to make your own fun because things can be boring. And Jimmy certainly fills that in. So I gave him a break again today after he helped me most of the afternoon. He came from another job, as you know, to the shop, and we went up there and we helped. So that was my story, my upholstery story, outside upholstery story for the day. So again, we're almost close to 19,000. So if you guys haven't subscribed, or in South Boston years ago, they used to say vote and vote off, and I'm not sure if you could do that, you guys. I wouldn't want you to do that. That's cheating anyhow. So, if you voted once, thank you. And if you're new, please subscribe. If you like that story, subscribe. So we have plenty of those stories. So Facebook, Patrick's got a few Facebook. That's starting to get alive again. I think there's a lot. Sometimes it just goes through these stages up and down, and we got some really good Facebooks today. So I can't wait to get to that. And as usual, the YouTube. Um, Still love the stories that we get and the compliments and the criticisms. Patrick sometimes erases them before I can see the really bad ones. But there's not many compared to the good ones, So, but all criticism I think is useful. So I think one of them that didn't make it on here was that they just couldn't see anything, and it must have been one of the earlier videos. So I would say to anybody that's on, I'm not sure if they're going too deep into all of what we have, but um, if you want to go on there and take a look, look a little deeper into some of the newer ones, because in the early days certainly didn't have the knowledge and the angles and everything else. We kind of was. I tell you guys all the time, it was a little at first. YouTube, when we first started, it was still one of those goofy things. um, it was more or less for kids, and skateboards and things like that. But as the years go by, I mean, everybody's using it now. I mean, let's face it, everybody, even doctors are on there, and it's definitely a legitimate social media. Not that it ever wasn't, but what I'm saying is it has evolved somewhat, and so has in our channel. So check out the newer ones if you really want. Don't give up on the old. Don't give up on the channel on the older ones. Go to the newer ones and take a look, because there's a lot of work in there, a lot of effort, and it's free. You know, and we don't really get paid a lot from YouTube. But I will tell you, we get solicited a lot by these major corporations. I think Nike was one of them. Big names. They want to do advertising, which we won't do. Patrick's smart that way. I think that would take away from the whole thing of what we believe in. So I just want to catch up on some messages. So Daphne's here, Randy's here, Wes is here, and Randy's Chicago says it. Chicago's saying vote early, vote off, and so South Boston was like that years ago. I'm not sure if it's like that anymore. Hopefully it isn't. We want fair voting, right, guys? Because I won, it's funny, I'll bring it up. I won Best of Boston in 2018, which was a big deal. Well, we didn't really, Patrick and I, when we won that, and Patrick won it, Patrick, McHale, and me, and there were a lot of people as subcontractors. Everybody deserves the shout out on that one because it was a team effort. But at the time, that's done through the Boston Magazine, which is a big deal. So we won, and the voting, people would say something like, "Oh well, how many upholsterers could they?" I would suggest, if for your little, whatever you guys do in life, you guys know. Um, I try not to criticize anybody that has some type of an award, or no matter how small it looks, to them it might be a big deal. So always be encouraging for people. I mean, anything, little thing really helps in a business, especially too, the little awards. But this happened to be a pretty big one. So I'd have people say to me, "Well, how many upholsterers?" Because I looked into it. I had so many people asking me all these questions. Well, how many upholsterers could there be? Haha, what was there, another upholsterer you up against? 222 is the answer in the metropolitan Boston area, at least. And those are the ones that have a public view or public place. We don't know how many other ones are working. They could be working in their basement and not, you don't know them. So I'd say maybe there's close to 300. but they wouldn't be on the radar anyhow to a Boston magazine. So 222, and then they say, well, how hard could it? You just did you know somebody? I said, no, I don't know anybody at Boston Magazine. And the way they do it is they check you out at least three times and three different ways. I think they might check you out. They might come in, they visit you, they text you, they phone you to see if you're timely and responding back, things like that. You're vetted. You're vetted definitely, and then they have to go before three judges because other people have vetted other upholsterers too, and the judges decide from there. So it's a process. It's a process. So winning it was a big deal, and we actually found that out the night that we they have the ceremony. It was kind of cool, and Patrick has that poster. I think on Upholstery on Broadway, you guys can check out some of those pictures. It was fun. But anyhow, let's get to. I'm gonna try to keep up with the comments like we did last time, and if I have time, I'm gonna. I fell way behind on this chair. Why did I fall behind? Because we had shortages with the webbing. This has to be an all natural piece. I can't use any substitute or synthetic. So during this process, I ran out of cotton and webbing, and I couldn't get from my supplier. Thankfully, Jimmy came through for me, and I know Daphne wanted to come through for me too, and I appreciate that. But the cotton and the webbing finally was available. So now the customer, and he's a friend. People have a certain amount of time that they're willing to be patient with. Let's say that. So I have to get moving on that. So maybe if I have time, I can do that. Maybe you'd be interested in seeing me hand stitch. Oh, by the way, I prepped up. This whole thing is prepped. There's no hand stitching yet. I put the whole thing on with staples. I put stretches on the bottom and then cotton, and then I put all my cover in place. The only thing I have to do now is stitch. Now, sometimes I like to do that rather than one piece at a time. And I guess the only way you probably can only do this when you don't have piping. Now that I think about it, yeah, that's true. Um, with piping, I think you have to do it in pieces. But I managed to get the whole thing, even the back, the outside back, on. It's all. I don't pin it. I pin if your fabric can take a pin staple, it's much quicker. So that's what I hope to really show you guys faster ways of doing things that are efficient and they're not shortcuts. That's a very fast way. Sometimes with the needle, you guys have struggled with the pins, and you guys have it's hard sometimes to get through. This is a very heavy fabric, so it's hard to get through. Uh, Sometimes if the fabric will take it without making a hole, I mean, the pin stapling, and I've shown you guys how to do that with your pneumatic gun. You don't go right in like you normally would. You kind of go in and tilt the head of the gun and fire so that it's not all the way in. See, I can feel this is halfway in. So it holds it in place. And you're ready if you get it nice and stretched out like I have it, you're ready to start stitching, which I will do. So the stitching, you want to try to stay as close to the edge as you can. Although I have to tell you, hand stitching doesn't have to be perfect. Almost all of my students, I taught them how to hand stitch, and I come over and they think I'm kidding. I says, it's too good. You got to make it look like you hand stitch and put the effort into it. You don't want to make it look like a. Hold on a second. You don't want to make it look like a machine or the ply grip did it. So you're going to see me going really kind of fast on this, and I'm not going to care too much. But I did see one thing. See the wood's up here and the fabric's a little lower, so I think I'm just going to adjust that up like that, so that when I get to it, it'll already be there. And then this here, what I would do, see this, I would unfurl this. So these are the little things you do after you've gone over and you've just looking for my pliers, any pliers. Then you go back and you could do little things like this. I'm going to unfurl this to kind of bring it up to the top a little bit more, almost to the edge. And it doesn't have to be perfect, you guys. It doesn't have to be perfect. Right? I'll be hand stitching that in a minute, hopefully, if I get to it. Randy says, it sounds like they do it right way around there. Most of the best of stuff is a popularity contest. It's like they do it right way around here. Yeah. Randy, have you ever been nominated? I'm wondering. Anybody out there? Hi, Helen from United Kingdom. And Wes is here. I'm not sure. I can't remember where Wes is from, but hello. And I know Daphne's from our parts around here, so everybody's here. We got a good group. So let's get to this. The YouTube. Let's see. Janine says on the question and answer, more great information and tips. She's really good about comment. Now she's from Australia, so she doesn't get to come on live. I don't think she's been here one time live, but she always watches later. And I hope a lot of people do that because I think there's information, different type of information on here, and hopefully people enjoy that. Randy says 5 days ago about the staples. Thank you, Randy. And the staples. Nice and informative as always. I wish you would have touched a bit on the difference in staple gauge, in particular, the difference between upholstery staples and good old hardware store staples. Well, the upholstery staples are a lighter gauge, as you know. And you know what? You have to be careful with staples. I'm not sure if I touched upon that in that video, but I'm always paying attention to my supplier, and my supplier can't get away with anything. He really can't. I mean, because if I'm like any other upholsterers, I'm sure other people complain about the same things. I'll give you, for instance, lately, I buy these plastic bags. And things are getting, the quality of stuff is going downhill, as you guys know. And so I got these plastic bags that I use to cover furniture, which presentation is everything, you guys. Once you fix, you finish a piece of furniture, you make sure that you clean it off well, pay attention to the threads, things like that, because you can be the best upholsterer in the world. If you like leave threads hanging and you don't, I know people who do this. They're good upholsterers. They finish a job. They haphazardly go over and clean it and leave staples, cotton lint, and they'll cover the furniture and deliver it in a pickup truck with two dogs in the back. I mean, it's crazy. Why would you? These are It's really surprising because I've known really good upholsterers who didn't really have that follow through. And the other is true. You can be like a not a good upholsterer, but if you have the follow through, and if you cover everything, individually wrap the cushions, which I do, in plastic, even if it's not raining. I've had cases, you anything can happen. A bird can be flying overhead. Seriously. I had one time, I knew an upholsterer that delivered a job, and he had one of those roll up back doors, and grease fell off the top and went on his white sofa, and he had to do the whole thing over again. Why? It was a sunny day. He didn't think he needed it, and he didn't cover it. So, um, I would pay attention to these little detailed things. So the plastic bags. So putting one on the other day, and it has seams, definitely, but it just rips in the middle of the bag. I mean, you could tell that the plastic they've this is what they do. They start cheating on the chemicals or the amount of chemicals that they use or materials that they use. And the fabric's the same thing, you guys, by the way. They do this with fabric. So the companies, big companies too, I won't mention, big companies hire, hi Deborah, they hire a mill overseas. Usually the scenario is an overseas mill. They check out the product, the buyers, they like what they see, they like the quality. They put their orders in. First 1,000 yards are fine, and then all of a sudden the fabric, Randy, I don't know if Randy even knows this, the fabric starts getting a little thin because a lot of times the backing is the chemical that they use, and they cheat on that. The front's the same. They can't cheat on the front, I don't think. It's the backing that they start cheating on, and all of a sudden they're down half, really thin, and the double rubs that they originally quoted on that piece of fabric are not. It's not the same. So instead of 100,000 double rubs, it probably goes down to 5,000 double rubs. Seriously, I've seen it. So it's the same thing with this plastic bag, but I get on the horn right away and it says, "What's going on with your plastic bag? Come on." So it's the same thing with the staples, getting back to the staple, right? Because that's the question I have here. You'd be surprised. You look at a staple. This is a light gauge. You know, and I have to look myself to see. It's a number 7. And it, guys, it doesn't mean anything to you really, but the gauge, it's a thinnest gauge or thinnest staple. So the some guns, so even some pneumatic guns, take a thicker staple that are probably 4 of these staples. They're no good. I don't like them. The thin staples always go through your fabric crisper and better, okay? But also your finger, so be careful. So one thing about the staples that you always have to be paying attention to, and I'll be looking every once in a while. 2 things actually. One is the glue. Sometimes they over glue the staples. This happened to me once with the same supplier. Started to jam the gun. So what's going on with your staples? Send me another box. Or I've opened up boxes sometimes and there would be rust. That's no good either. You know, they might have been kept in a moist place or something. You know, so you always have to pay attention to the materials that you're using because it will reflect on the job that you do, right? So it's a good question. Randy's very intuitive usually, and Randy says the base cloth is the word is what I was trying to say. They changed the base cloth and the material to save money, you know, because it's a very competitive, you know, fabric. I'm sure mills are very competitive with one another, and they might have quoted a fabric that they're not making any money on unless they cheat a little bit like that. Let's go to so that was Randy. Wes says, "Thanks, man. Good video. You're welcome, Wes. I hope that you enjoy. I know you guys enjoy the videos." Oh, and then Parabellum said some staples rust. So yeah, marine. I think I don't do marine work, but I think that they might have a staple. I know that they have buttons, marine buttons that don't. You have to be very careful, you guys. Okay, here's another tip. You want to save yourself a lot of aggravation if you live next to the ocean. Randy, I don't think you have to worry about this, but maybe if you had a lakeside, anywhere where there's moisture, if you're using the regular buttons, for instance, buttons can rust, and I've actually seen. We have to be real careful in this part of the country along the ocean, Martha's Vineyard and Nantucket and all Cape Cod. You need to use the right button that doesn't rust. There are cloth buttons that you can buy, cloth back buttons, but they're specific marine buttons, so aren't supposed to rust. But the regular buttons that we use will rust, but usually it's not a concern in any residential furniture. It's not that you know unless it's right on the ocean and you're getting that moisture. So that's a good tip because that could save you a lot of aggravation if you guys do work along the ocean. So let's go to the next one. The Upholstery Show Live. And this is also from Randy. You got an odd question. And hi, Denise. And she says, high humidity here in North Carolina. I keep my staples in a plastic container with the pack of the dry beads. Oh, that's a good idea, Denise. That is a good idea. But you should check out, if you have that problem, you might want to check out. I'm sure there are marine staples. Sure of it. Um, and then Randy always goes with the rustless button shells. Maybe that's a good policy. And then Deborah says stainless for marine. Yeah. Randy's on the upholstery show live last week. I have a hard question from a customer the other day. Ask how much my labor is per yard. That's really an interesting question. Had a hard time explaining that labor is based on how long a project will take, not by how many yards of fabric is used. But you know what's interesting about that is that sometimes the two, depending on what your pricing is, but sometimes the two there's a correlation. For instance, on a wing chair, if you say 8 yards, $800, I don't get that. I get a little bit more now. But there was a time when the yardages that I was quoting was kind of really matching up in $100 increments to the labor. Like so, a sofa, 22 yards, $2,200. It seemed like every estimate I was given, I had to look at it again. Am I subconsciously making a mistake here? But no, at one point the pricing was matching that, but not now. It's a little bit more with pricing going up. So, for an 8 yard, for instance, on a wing chair now, 8 yards, I get $1,100 for the labor. So it doesn't match up that way. But that's interesting. That could be why that they asked that question. Maybe. Well, we don't know why they asked the question, but it is an odd way of looking at pricing. So thank you, Randy, for that. All these contributions help me especially when Jimmy's not here, and I don't. And Jimmy amounts to material, you guys. So I have material with Jimmy, and if you guys watch the online classes, by the way, if you're just tuning in and you're wondering what the heck is he doing? He's just live and he's an upholsterer. Well, behind all this, the reason we do this behind the scenes, behind the is that online classes, the YouTube videos. When we have a store at Upholstery on Broadway where you can buy supplies and all the other stuff, the online classes. But we have this. But the reason this was, and this kind of changed a little bit, but the reason this is here is that people can ask questions about their projects, perhaps that they're doing with the online classes, or like we're going over the YouTube channel right now with these questions, and you can ask them live. We encourage live questions, and we hit on something really interesting today, which was kind of, I like it when things just come up, which this has, about rusting, and when you do this, and so I told you on this chair, speaking of rusting, the inside wings were the horsehair. Everything else is the new horsehair, but that was left because my friend said, "What's the rusting on the tacks?" And I told him that most likely it was the saliva of the upholsterer that did it, and he kind of liked that. He wanted me to keep it, which I did. So that's underneath the hair. Nobody will ever see it. The next upholsterer will see it. God knows when that will be. And Janine says, um, excuse me, we posted on seat cushions. Warren, check this out. And she said more great information and tips. And then we have more YouTubes, and we have Rebecca's asking about what size double piping and what brand do you use. The double piping is 5/32nd, and the brand, there's no brand, because it's that's funny about that. It doesn't have a brand. Now, there used to be a brand that was better than what we have today, called Conso. Conso was a brand name in piping, and it really was good. So Randy says Jimmy asks very good questions in the online classes. Yeah, it's interesting about questions. You really have to present yourself as a teacher to promote questions. I mean, I can speak for myself. If I've been in classes with the grouchy teacher, I'm gonna be real quiet. Or a teacher, worse yet, a teacher that's a little, I want to say degrading. I think that's too strong of a word. Maybe sarcastic. Or sometimes teachers have a bad habit of using a bad question uh, to just draw attention to the person that asked it. You guys know what I mean. But I think that promoting, this was more true with the big classes that I would run. Promoting questions, just by being receptive to them, is important. And I'm not going to give myself credit for Jimmy's questions, because Jimmy, on his end of things, has to be willing to look a little foolish with some questions. Let's put it that way. But there's no foolish questions when you're learning, you know. But Jimmy was not afraid to ask, and I think that's what that's why the classes are special, and I think that's why you guys learn. These could be questions too that some people would be embarrassed to ask. Jimmy's not Jimmy. I don't think Jimmy has an embarrassing bone in his body. So he really is one of the best one of the best students that I've had because of the question. I don't mind answering questions. That's why you're there as a teacher. He was good with the when in the live classes too. We would have 12 people, and Jimmy would be he would be, he's like that on online. You see him on the live show like that. Um, that promotes learning, that good-natured, joking a little, not too serious, but I think that also just, relaxes people, and, he was good at that. He was enjoyable to have in the classes. So she goes on to say, "Thanks. I love the old school pro techniques." I'm glad she can recognize the old school pro techniques. I like that. My mom and I are trained this way, and I appreciate your process. Thank you. Well, that's interesting. Well, Rebecca, thanks for watching. I do appreciate that. I guess I always say watching um, my students work or teaching my students has made me a better upholsterer in the long run. Much better upholsterer. Um, and I have to say, and I say this with all honesty, those who teach teach. Those who you know what I mean. What's that? Daphne knows what I mean. Those who teach teach. Those who do do something like that. But I've come across some of you guys with them. My Some of my students have ended up being better upholsterers. Seriously, um, than I'll admit that. But the teaching is important too, right? Uh, Daphne says she doesn't know that one. Maybe that's she's I think Daphne's like 25 years old, so she wouldn't know. She wouldn't know. That's a couple of generations ago, Daphne. So Randy says my supplier sells Petco Welt, whoever that is. I've never heard of that. Daphne says, haha. Um, and then Randy says, yeah, Jimmy asked some good questions. Yeah. Okay, Linda knows. Those that can do, what's the rest? Those that can't teach. That's it. Oh, it's fun though. It really is. Teaching is one of the greatest joys that, no matter what it is, that you could possibly have, I think. So we'll go on to the rare find, 1860s. That was a good one. We get a lot of response from that, and I wish Patrick had more time, you guys, to do some of the research with the videos. In that case, I helped him a little. I'm a little bit of a researcher myself, um, digging information. I was good at digging up information before Google and all that because there's certain things that you can't get from Google, you guys. You can't get everything you need from Google. Sometimes you have to do the hard research and go into these archives, kind of like that show National Treasure. You go in and you're digging away. To the oldest in Massachusetts. We have a place where you can go to look up old deeds, for instance, and they have some of the original books go back to the 1600s. Can you believe that? I go like this because they actually let people actually if people look at them. They're public records, that's why, but they're really old. It's like really like they're falling apart, and you get to go in there if you have, anybody can go in because they're public records. But sometimes it takes dirty work to find out. And I think on this one here, I just devoted some time. So Patrick we came up with it, and I think that's what the response is a lot of times to that one. We had graphics with it. We had a picture of the man whose company it was that made the chair and things like that. But you guys should check it out if you haven't checked it out. But anyhow, and the thumbnail that Patrick used, I always think the thumbnail is great. Amy says, I thoroughly enjoyed watching this. Your love for antique pieces and craftsmanship involved made me smile throughout the entire video. That's a great compliment. I also appreciate your inquisitive mind in researching your findings. I probably just should have read what she said instead of preempting. I did a preemptive strike. I didn't need to. Randy says, yeah, I did say 5/32. Thank you, Randy. 5/32. Once covered in fabric, it finishes to about a quarter inch in diameter. That's right. Uh, and then Nancy's asking questions on the comment for all you who may not see the comments later. So, what is the difference between cord and welt? Welt is piping, right? It's all the same. Cord, welt, and piping. I say it's the same. But sometimes people refer to cording as the pre-made stuff. Stay away from that, you guys. The only good thing that The only place you can use a pre-made piping, the problem with the pre-made pipings, they're a little small and the flanges are too flimsy. They don't make up great on a cushion, for instance. It's really difficult to get your needle right up against that little piping that they give you and that flimsy flange. You're better off making your own. So these are really good questions. The only place you can use that pre-made stuff might be like a fixed area of the chair, like a skirt top or something, and or the outsides right here, a fixed area. That's it. I mean, everything that you should do should be your own cutting, your own piping. Sometimes on the bias, sometimes not. And if somebody wants something a little different, they can buy 3 yards of a contrasting fabric or something. Um, people are always trying to fancy things up, and I try to back people away from doing that because you can get awfully tired, in my opinion, of a contrasting piping. So usually I try to talk them into other design elements like if you're doing piping in a little stripe, you cut on the bias, and it has a really cool look to it, like a twill. A twill's a different twill is that's another another right, Randy? So you got twill, you got welt, you got cording, you got piping, all this, all pretty much all the same. But I don't get into pre-made stuff. And the designers, when I was working with designers, they always want to go with that stuff, not realizing that it's not really the right application at all for upholstery. So Randy says, and I agree with him, the only place for the pre-made stuff is cornices and drapery, for sure. You're getting into a little bit more fussier work, smaller machinery, right, Randy? So anybody that's doing the draperies, they're seamstresses more. We are stitches, and I would never say that I'm a seamstress. I'm a stitcher first. The difference is we're not spending 100% of our work life on a sewing machine. We're spending about, Randy, what would you say, 25% of our, it depends now. Randy's out in the Midwest. This is interesting. So Randy's out in the Midwest. So he's seeing more modern furniture than I am. I'm seeing more antiques and modern. So I'll ask Randy, my time on the machine probably would be about 25%. And the other is the bench. I'm 75% on the bench. So with the seamstress, somebody like that does draperies or slip covers, they're on their machine almost 100%. They are cutting. They're cutting fabric, so that accounts for something. But at least 90-95% they're on their machine. So that what does that make them? That makes them a little bit better at not stitching, but seams, seamstresses. Does that make sense? Uh, so let's look for the next one. This was oh man, this next one, I can't read it. Hold on a second. Sorry, guys. Well, it was the crate and barrel fitted panel arm reupholstery. That thing gave me fits. I don't know what the comment is on there. Maybe Patrick erased it because that was a some of these videos I you'll see that I struggle with it. And usually it's a combination of maybe not the right fabric and the actual whatever I'm doing at that time. And we haven't erased, I said to Pat a couple of times, we should go through all of the videos and take out the ones that we don't like, including the ones that people can't see and they complain. But I think Randy or somebody touched upon the fact that they like to see you more experience with YouTube channels than I do, but they like to see how it evolves. So we haven't done that. I don't think we've removed one video, but some of them I wasn't happy with. But what are you going to do? So Patrick leaves them up. He thinks it's a good thing to just have the content there. And then I'm not going to sugarcoat it. Some of the stuff that we do is difficult. You're going to have a chair that no matter how good you are, that you're going to have trouble with. I knew an upholsterer threw a chair out a second story window because he was so frustrated at the job that he was doing. There's no point in getting like that. What I do is I put it down and walk away, do something else. And if the customer's complaining, I'll say, it's just taken me a little bit longer. Make up a white lie, I guess. I'm not going to tell them. I'm embarrassed to say that I'm having a hard time. I don't think a client wants to hear that. I mean, when you go to a mechanic, you don't want to hear, I took the engine apart and there's this extra piece. I don't know where it goes. You don't want to hear your mechanic say that, or your doctor's saying, "Oops, oops," when you're on the table under. Sometimes you can hear them. They don't realize. Do doctors and nurses realize that? I remember when I was a kid, I had my appendix taken out at 13. I remembered them talking. They were saying things. It's crazy. I mean, adult things that I shouldn't have been hearing, and I wasn't out. I think they maybe should have a rule not to say anything. Never assume that somebody's knocked out. I guess I don't know why I got into that, but anyhow. So Randy says it's only 30. It's about 30% for him on the machine on the sewing. So 70% on the bench, which includes cutting fabric out too. It's strange when YouTube inserts Bob's Discount Furniture. Really, Randy? I didn't even know that. I'm gonna have to make Patrick aware of that because I don't that's not something that we promote at all. I mean, we have ads, but not during the YouTube. Does that make sense? I mean, what I'm talking about, so that's almost like product placement, Randy. That's not right because we get these offers all the time. They offer to pay you. We never pursued it any further than that. But if Bob's Discount Furniture is inserting on my YouTube, like as a placement instead of a commercial, that's not right. Especially since, uh, you know, yeah, I won't say anything else. Okay, so let's get back to the. Now I want to get back to the Facebook, or get to the Facebook. Let me just make sure the YouTube. Yep, YouTube's all set. So this is on the Facebook, and this is from. I'm not sure who this is from, but I'm going to show you a picture in a minute. Let me just read it. Just finished reupholstering an antique sofa for a wedding venue. I cleaned, picked, and replaced all the horsehair. Wow, that's cool. On to something more modern. Round chair has a solid wood frame, not plywood. Nice surprise. And I'm not sure if I can do it. I've upholstered rectangular ottoman with diamond tufting, as well as a pair of counter island chairs. The backs were tufted. I've never done a round ottoman though. Any thoughts or recommendations, or is this too complex? Also, would I what would I charge? I'm in New Jersey, USA. Haven't committed out of fear. So let me show you though. First, she's got some pictures of her work, and she's done. The top picture is the old horsehair, I guess, that she took out and cleaned, repicked it, and then reapplied it. And then she did this. Look at you guys. Denise, this is Denise. I'm sorry, Denise. She's on here now. Sorry, Denise. I didn't see your name before. I got a surprise. Remind me, you guys, for you local guys, a student contacted me and she has some antique frames. Denise just reminded me. And I think I'm going to share her email with you guys if you want to. She's having a yard sale on May 1st. She called me for first dibs, but I have no use for them. But they're really nice antiques. And I'll show you the pictures. I have an email that I'll show you. But let's look at Denise's first, if I can get it up. There we go. That's that antique sofa she did. Nice, huh? And this must be a chair she did, or she's asking. I'm not sure about this one, what she's asking on this one, but let's see if we can. So this is the outside back, and I like to see this. I'm not sure if this is the old outside back or the new, or the stuff that she's using. But if you're using that's nylon. The problem with I would use regular webbing, the seat webbing, not the back webbing on this, the red webbing. I'll tell you what happens to nylon. if you hit up against nylon, it stretches and it doesn't bounce back like your jute would, like your jute webbing. And she's saying it's the old outside back. Are you asking Denise if you should use that? I'm recommending on a curved back like that. By the way, I should tell you that a lot of upholsterers that I knew, they were wonderful inside upholsterers, but they would oftentimes lose it on the outside. Something happened where they were just maybe in a hurry to finish a job, and they would kind of let the ball, you know, what's the expression? Drop the ball on the outsides. And when you have a curved back like this, a tub chair on this, very, I do like the idea that they have so many of the webbings. That was a good idea. But really, what you want to do is you don't really have to go too wild on those. Only where the curves are, only where the extreme curves are, do you need the webbing. Everywhere else, you could put a stretch on. So you put your webbing placements in there. So you probably end up with, you really don't need the two in the center of the back because your stretcher will be able to do that. And that stretches another piece of fabric over the webbing. But the strategic spots on the back would be where the real curves are, like right in this area, with the webbing first and then a stretcher. Um, the reason that you don't want to use nylon webbing or cardboard is because the first time, you guys know, when you move furniture, you put your knee into it and lift most of the times. That's how you do it. When you put your knee into the nylon or cardboard, you can push the cardboard in, it won't come back. The webbing in the stretcher has like a trampoline effect, and that's why it's a good thing to do. And Denise says, "Thanks." I'm glad I was able to answer that, and you're there. A lot of times I don't. People might not be here to answer. So Denise, are you asking about this too? Really? This round one? You asking about this? Um, I think this is her. I don't know what your fare is on this one. Um, because it's just the diamond tufting. So you start on your interior, you work out, and then I think she's worried about the pleats on the outside. If you can maintain the same direction of the pleats all the way around, that's probably the best tip I can give you. But really, oftentimes your fabric is going to kind of point the way for you with the seams. You want to try to be even with the seams for sure if you can. But this is no different than a rectangular. I don't think you should be concerned at all about this. You might have to have more pin tacking for sure. um, you pin tack straight in between the buttons and then try to have an even amount of fabric like you would on a rectangular. You can go ahead and do it. Don't be afraid. I think it would look great. That's not Denise's. That's somebody else's. Let me see if I can find out who this is. Sorry, sometimes Patrick will email these to me. All right, so this is Denise Shepard. This is Denise Hackett. It's two Denises. That's why I'm mixed up. Just finished this French settee deluxe class. Denise says, not Denise Hackett. I told you that Buddy Hackett was an upholsterer at one time, right, Denise? I know I mentioned that to you. Any relation? He was a funny guy. Just finished the French settee deluxe class, lesson 8, edge roll. Couldn't have done this double edge roll without it. She's talking about this one. Um, I used the original burlap edge roll. I like reusing stuff, you guys. If you've watched other videos, not Jimmy's. Jimmy's was all new materials except for the cushion. That was all new. That's what's good about that class. Also, is that people need to know how to do it from scratch. So Jimmy is doing it from scratch. I used the original burlap edge roll and a new white edge roll. The corners aren't perfect, hoping it won't be noticeable. So let's just take a close up look at it. Don't you hate when people do this? Close up, right? So if I were to offer a tip before you go any further, it would be, now you have to be careful when you do this. You see how, if you guys can see her corner, this is very common on heavier edge rolls. Okay, it's really hard to. It's called cornering out. Notice how the original is cornered out. You look at this line here. Look at the bottom line with the burlap edge roll. See, it's even, and you see how hers is a little bit in. Now, it won't make as much difference. If this was down here, it would, but um, so I wouldn't worry too much about it. But if she wants to square this up a little bit more, she wants to do. You really have to be careful to do this. Okay, take your regulator, pull the regulator in, and it's going to take push it down, and then try to draw it out with your regulator. Your regulator is probably the most use. You guys couldn't see that, I don't think. Patrick was here, he'd be telling me, "Turn the camera, stupid." You see? No, he wouldn't say stupid. He's very respectful, Patrick. He's a good kid. I shouldn't say that, right? So you see this? You see how the original edge roll is even with the frame, the edge of the frame, and then her edge roll seems to have come in. That's very common on one of the most common mistakes students make. Right? She could take a regulator right at that corner and kind of pull it, draw it out. She could even take once she does that, she can maybe take a not a stitch, but she can get like a 1 foot, sorry, 2 foot section of that twine, wrap it around here, and then do a slip knot. And if she doesn't know how to do a slip knot, she can go on to the YouTube. I think we got at least 2 videos on slip knots. Somebody complained, why don't you do a video on the slip knot on one of the other YouTube videos? I said, well, we have two. You got to do a little research yourself sometimes, even on the channels, right? um, so that's my suggestion there. She's doing a great job otherwise. And I think this is Pam. She's showing us an East Lake. I'm not sure if Pam's on here, but thank you, Pam, because she's showing her shop. We were talking about Pam's shop last week, um, and this is an interior shot of her shop where she does consignment, and she's showing us a an East Lake. Is that it? No, sorry, hold on. Showing us the back of an East Lake chair at least. See on the bottom picture, there's a back of an East Lake chair in her consignment shop. Recently, I posted this East Lake piece. It's in the shop I rent space. Oh, great. I'm not sure if that's it, you guys. Might be. Let me just make sure. So I have a little bit of time left over. I'm just going to catch up on my. Well, I'm going to just do this. So a little tip when you definitely need hand stitching thread. If you are a good hand stitcher, you do not really necessarily care. People want to match every color. They think it's like their sewing machine thread. If you do an okay job on this hand stitching, it doesn't matter what color the thread is. I have red thread here, and this is like a off green or something really weird green. So, but I did want to mention that on this is probably the maximum area that you could take one length of thread. You don't really want, like on the outside back, I'm probably going to do it in two. I could do the front of the arm in one, but this is the maximum this wing. So usually it's about 2 times the area that you're stitching. It's going to cut this. Now, when I cut a thread, I cut at an angle. You guys probably know this trick, right? Cut it at an angle so that it's easier to thread the needle. And I'm using a 2.5 inch needle. Why is it 2.5 inches? It's measuring from here to here. So we have needles that go up to, boy, I have an old needle I'll show you. I think I've shown you this before. What did they call upholsterers in the old days when people appreciated us more? They called us needle artists. Needle artists. So this is the needle that I used in this chair for the horsehair stitching. Look at the difference, you guys. They look like moon phases, don't they? But that is a nice needle. I don't. Randy says he can get big needles like this. Debbie says, um, "Hi, Debbie. Found an antique desk chair 20 years ago in a skip. Finally upholstered the seat last week using the traditional technique shown in your video. Just to thank you for the help and inspiration. Oh, you're welcome. That makes it. I'll tell you, you guys. You guys checking in on these live question and answers really do make a difference. I really do like it. It really gives me inspiration myself, and to continue. I don't know how long we're going to continue this, but I think it's worthwhile. So what I'm going to do now, my thread is another tip. And why don't you want to take? You might want to ask Jim. If Jimmy was here, he'd be asking, right, Randy? Why don't you take all of the thread that you need for the outside back? Meaning it would be two times all the way around the outside back. Because what happens is you get tangled up. Um, and a lot of times the twine, you have to kind of let the needle untwirl itself. It gets twirled and then it gets knotted, and it's really difficult to get a knot out of this thread. That's the main problem. Even when you're doing areas like this, every once in a while you have to let the needle twist itself back, the thread back, by the needle will go all the way around. So that's why I think people might, in the old days, they might have been more skilled even at this, or they might have known tricks that we've forgotten. A lot of that's another thing I should mention. Do you know how much information has been lost through these old trades? It's really tough to think about it, but it's true. And not just upholstery. At least upholstery's alive. It's been alive, but there was a huge gap in the amount of people that were doing upholstery. So that's why these videos are so important, I guess. But in other trades like leather tanning and things like that, or barrel making, even, which was an art form, people still they collect barrels. Why didn't they continue making old barrels if it's so aesthetically, nice? Randy says he can get up to an 8-inch curved needle. Yeah, that's good. And you can get diamond pointed. You know the difference between a round point needle, which this is, and a diamond point needle. A lot of people like the diamond. They think the diamond point needle goes smoother through materials than the round point needle. Let's get going over here. So now, right-handed, left-handed people. If you're a right-handed person, it's better to work from the right to the left, opposite left-handed, right? So I'll start up here, and I'm going to come this way, and I'm just going to go out to the try to go out to the outside as much as I can here. I come this way, and then I make a knot. Some upholsterers make their knot with their needle. I like to make sure the knot is there though, and then I cut near the knot. So when I come this way now, I know I'm going to be starting from a better standpoint here. This fabric, my friend thinks it was, I think it's an older fabric. So it has kind of like a dryness to it. I don't know if it's true though. So this is the first needle I put into this. So I don't know how this is going to go. So far, I don't like it. So I'm going to show you guys a little trick. I do not like the way that needle's reacting. So what I'm going to do, spring mist, right? Or some people call it wrinkle free or whatever. There's different brands on this. But what this does is it moistens fabric. You spray it, right? It's going to make my job a little easier. You can see how too it can take out. It does really good on this actually. It takes out a lot of the. If there's a roll mark, it could take a roll mark out. I wouldn't steam. I never steam. I use this stuff, and it makes it maybe what could be an older fabric little bit more moist so that it's easier to hand stitch. Now, I don't like this little bridge here, so I'm gonna do is make a cut there. Not don't want to extend the cut beyond the wood, the edge where you're sewing. Just enough so that it goes around. It's not bridged. It was bridging over. So I have a video on this too, you guys. You guys could check it out. Not doing too good of a job. I don't want that. Well, I really don't. You guys think I might be kidding, but I'm not. I really don't. I want a couple of puckers here and there. You know, I've mentioned this before. Some of those fancy Italian cars, I think the Lamborghinis, you go in, they have a double row of hand stitching, and it goes like this. It's like, like that. It's done on purpose so that people know that it's a hand stitched. Those guys and girls who do that, believe me, can make a stitch like this. It's funny. I'm a little disappointed in this that it looks too good, but you do have to make the stitch, and the fabric's not really allowing me to have too many puckers. I'll make it up somewhere on here. Give it a little puckery look. Looks too good to me. Anyhow, so let me catch up on some of these. Deborah, are you talking about the double seams like on a car seats? No, on a Lamborghini. I was in one Lamborghini once, and I'll never forget it because it was on the dashboard, um, and you go along, and there's two rows. I should say two rows of stitching, and you know that they could be perfect with those rows, like a quarter of an inch, but these were like an eighth of an inch, quarter of an inch, an eighth of an inch, a little bit more than a quarter of an inch, all the way across. It's done on purpose. Um, oh, Deborah's talking about what do you think of the French seams? Oh, the French seams has to, French seams have to be really, I'm not talking about that. That has to be straight. Um, and the advantage that a manufacturer has, one of the few advantages manufacturers have over custom upholsterers is they have the specific machine that makes that perfect. Us upholsterers, we have usually just a single needle machine, and we're doing things by hand. I always tell my clients, I'm a custom upholsterer, meaning it's gonna it sounds funny, but it's true. Meaning, you're not gonna have a perfect seam. You're gonna, not gonna be sloppy, but it's not gonna be perfect. Randy says it's hard to do and make it look good on a single needle machine, and he tries to avoid them, which I do too. Because it's funny, people are used to manufactured pieces, and they think that that's the best. Like, for instance, on cushions, manufacturers make the whole cushion at once. They don't make the piping separately. They have a machine that actually, don't ask me how it works. I have no idea. But machinery, they can do a lot of stuff with machinery. And now they have computers to do a lot of the stuff. So what does that mean? That on a cushion that's made by a machine, they can't do bias welting, which is really funny. So if you have a stripe on a manufactured piece, people will say, "Oh, look, they even matched the stripe on the welting to the border and the top of the cushion." They couldn't help but do it. The machine did it, but they can't take that same piping. Machine's not going to take that and bias cut it to the right proper lengths, the right thicknesses, and hand do the welt and then put it on to make it look like a beautiful French twill, like we do as custom upholsterers, right? um, Yeah, Deborah says she recommends they leave French scenes out. You're that customer that insists sometimes, but I go through that whole thing, that whole talk with them like I just did. So I think, you guys, this has been great. This has been over an hour and 10 minutes almost, hour, 4 minutes. But I really appreciate you guys checking in. And we're going to continue to offer. Patrick is going to be calling or coming back soon. That means that we'll have better graphics. We'll have better camera angles on the live show. And we look forward to producing more online classes and more videos for the YouTube. So if you guys have any ideas for that, you can contact us through this venue here or email us, upholsteryonbroadway@gmail.com. Check us out there. Check us out on Facebook at Broadway Upholstery. Check us out on the YouTube, Broadway Upholstery. And yeah, so thanks a lot for joining me, and I hope you guys have a great week. And thank you, Debbie, for catching us live and everybody else. So say good night. Thank you.